first and only special forces for Canada we're reviewing today is the Pathfinders. Pathfinders can trace their roots to the Second World War. During the Second World War, small groups of parachute soldiers were formed into Pathfinder units, the parachute ahead of the main force. The tasks were to mark the drop zones or landing zones, set up radio beacons as a guide for the aircraft carrying the main force, and to clear and protect the area as the main force arrives. The first two US campaigns, the drops into North Africa, Operation Torch, and Sicily, Operation Husky, did not make use of the Pathfinders. The jump into North Africa, made up of men of the 509th Parachute Infantry Battalion, resulted in its men being scattered to places such as Algeria, Gibraltar, and Morocco, when they ran into bad weather and got lost. The next major airborne operation took place in the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. Many of the same problems were encountered as the men were scattered as far as 65 miles from their drop zones due to high winds and poor navigation. In fact, some of the paratroopers landed so far off course that it would be a matter of weeks before they finally found their way back to the Allied lines. The Pathfinder forces were only formed about a week in advance of the jump at Kingston, Italy on September 13, 1943. When the majority of the Pathfinder landed directly on target, they were able to set up their radar sets and krypton lights on the drop zone. A quarter of an hour later, the main body of the paratroopers from the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment landed right on the middle of the drop zone. After the serious problems uncovered during the parachute drop in the Allies' invasion of Sicily, the Allied High Command questioned the utility of parachute infantry primarily because of their difficulty of dropping the infantry as a cohesive unit rather than as scattered groups. A review of procedures and methods resulted in the establishment of the Pathfinder teams to aid navigation to drop zones. The very same night, the newly formed Pathfinder detachment from the 509th PLB saw their very first action in that capacity at Avellino, Italy. However, unlike the successful Pathfinders at Kingston, those of the 509th at Avellino had markedly less success. However, this was not their fault, as the mountainous terrain surrounding the area deflected the radar signals and caused the pilot to become disorientated. At 21:30 hours on June 5th, about 200 Pathfinders began to take off from North Witham for the Kingston Peninsula in 20 C-47 aircraft of the 9th Troop Carrier Command Pathfinder Group. They began to drop at 00:15 hours on June 6 to prepare the drop zones for the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. They were the first American troops on the ground on D-Day, however their aircraft was scattered by low clouds and anti-aircraft fire. Many never found their assigned landing zone, some of the landing zones were too heavily defended, some were flooded. The low clouds and extremely intense anti-aircraft fire caused the Pathfinder sticks to be dropped off course, with only one stick landing in the correct place. Their radar beacons did not work somewhat effectively, even though the Pathfinders set up their equipment. Many of the sticks to follow up paratroopers landed clustered near these beacons. However, the lights proved ineffective as most were not set up due to the clouds and mist drops of the Pathfinders. While the bad weather and heavy anti-aircraft fire curtailed the effectiveness of the Pathfinder teams on D-Day, the overall airborne drop was a success. This was true because the misplacement and scattering of the airborne forces deceived the German High Command, and, as happened in Sicily, convinced them that there were far more American paratroopers present than there were actually in France. Airborne and Pathfinder forces did not see combat again until June 6, 1944, at the commencement of D-Day landings in Normandy, France. They were trained by the Pathfinder School at RAF North Witham, of which US Army Air Force designation was Army Air Force Station 479. To become a Pathfinder within the Canadian Armed Forces, candidates must have completed the basic reconnaissance course. To complete the drop zone landing zone controller course, candidates will also be additionally qualified as precision parachutists in the form of a static line, complete the square canopy course qualification, and have approval from their chain of command before being eligible for training. The journey to becoming a qualified PPF is not easy, and training is rigorous and highly selective, but the courage and strength individual gain as a candidate will stay with them for their entire life. All PPF candidates will undertake a number of distinct phases of training, firstly the Patrol Pathfinder PPF course, and move on to the advanced training. The first module that the candidates will be trained on is Insertion and Extraction Operator Training. Navigation is an important skill for military personnel, especially those in reconnaissance. Consequently, the first week consists of a navigation threshold knowledge test and follow-on training. Successful completion means candidates will move on to more physically and mentally intensive training, which includes watermanship, small boat operations, fast roping, helicopter casting, fast casting, and SER survival, evasion, resistance and escape training consisting of lectures and practical exercises. This module lasts up to 3 weeks. The second module the candidates are trained on are Pathfinder operated training. Like navigation, communication is an important skill for Pathfinders, especially in deep operations. Candidates will receive training in highly technological communications platforms, including use of satellites for rear link establishments. Candidates will also learn to establish insertion zones through a combination of theory and demonstration. During this module, candidates will begin their second-in-command (2IC) assessments. Leaders will practice under test conditions in order to prepare them for assessments undertaken during Module 3. Module 2 takes roughly 2 weeks of training. The last module the candidates must conduct is the Pathfinder Leader Training. This module focuses on assessing leaders and operators in a realistic training environment under arduous conditions. Candidates require the ability to plan a range of operations, advise and brief commanders, conduct coordination with air and naval assets, conduct mission analysis, write and issue orders, and conduct insertion or extraction missions in concert with higher level missions. Upon the successful completion of PPF course, the candidates will receive their Patrol Pathfinder qualification code and torch. Pathfinders still exist in a number of armed forces around the world. Most of them are senior members of the parachute units and have earned the right to wear the maroon beret. Pathfinders in Wargame Red Dragon are equipped with the Carbine M727, the M72 Law, and the C2A1. The Carbine M727, also known as the Colt Automatic Rifle 15 Military Weapons System, or CAR-15, was a family of the AR-15 and M16 rifle-based firearms, marketed by Colt in the 1960s and early 1970s. Due to their compact size, the short-barreled Colt Commando XM177 version of this family continued to be issued to the US military after the Vietnam War. The weapon was designed and manufactured by Colt's Manufacturing Company. The carbine can engage ground targets and helicopters up to 525 meters in-game, has an accuracy of 60% and a suppression rating of 40, and a rate of fire of 396 rounds per minute, which makes this weapon as an average rifle in-game. The launcher used is the M72 Law. It is a light anti-tank weapon. It is a portable, one-shot, 66mm unguided anti-tank weapon system. The manufacturer of this weapon is a company called NATO in Norway and in the United States. The range of the launcher is 525 meters, has an accuracy of 30% and an armored piercing power of 13. This is one of the worst launchers in-game, but it can take out high-value targets such as command vehicles and anti-air vehicles. The C2A1 is a different variant from the original L1A1 self-loading rifle. It is a British Commonwealth derivative of the Belgian FN-FAL battle rifle. The weapon was produced and manufactured by a Belgian company called the Fabrique Nationale de Hestel. It was also later manufactured in the UK, Australia, Canada, and India. The C2A1 can engage ground targets up to 770 meters, which is very far for a rifle in-game. It can engage helicopters of 595, has an accuracy of 40%, has a suppression rating of 55, and a rate of fire of 450 rounds per minute, which makes this weapon system very effective in-game. The Pathfinders in-game can be deployed in the M35 truck, the Bison armored personnel carrier, the Grizzly infantry fighting vehicle, and the CH-147 transport helicopter. The main role of Pathfinders in-game would be recon, and to gather information on enemy positions, power, tactics, and to identify weaknesses in enemy lines. They can also be used in assaults, oppositions, and taking out high-value targets. The Pathfinder Special Forces rating is 7, due to them having very poor equipment, but also being able to use this equipment very effective and getting behind enemy lines. The Pathfinders of Wargame Red Dragon are one of Canada's most valued units. They can provide recon and also provide their expertise in assaults and other tactics in-game.